Oh, finally the weekend is over and I can return back to my normal life. Yes, I like being back in a routine. This was a long weekend, not only for yours truly, but I'm sure many people out there. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This is Section 1904. This is our Monday podcast. This is our weekend recap, and it was a long weekend, so it might be a longer podcast than normal. This podcast is unlocked. This podcast is free. If you are a subscriber, we appreciate you supporting Section 1904. I'm Darren Smith. He's John Gennaro. If you're not a subscriber and you pressed play on today's player, and this is your first experience with Section 1904, well, welcome in. We hope that you will decide to support us and take a look around our website at section1904.com. Subscribe to the podcast, to the front row seat. You get all the daily stories, the headlines delivered right there to your inbox each and every weekday. It was a long weekend, hopefully a safe weekend for everybody as well. John, did you have a good one? Are you glad to be back, or would you like to still be out there enjoying your holiday?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I enjoyed my weekend. My wife was ill for a lot of it, so I spent a lot of it, just hanging out with my daughter and doing some parenting. There was a lot of pool time. There was a lot of beer time in the pool. There was a lot of soccer that didn't go our way, which we'll talk about. It was a good weekend overall. Quick note for anyone who has signed up to be a Section 1904 subscriber, or someone who's considered, and you're going, hey, I sent you guys money. What are you doing with that money? Outside of, maybe paying a couple bills here or there, I spent the weekend very, very excited because I purchased for us, Darren, new microphones. The sound quality of this podcast is about to get a lot better in a few days when these microphones show up. And I cannot wait because I am a dork who loves audio quality. And I'm very, very excited for later this week when, even when we're virtual, the quality of this podcast will sound like we're sitting in a studio together. Fingers
All right. Well, I look forward to that as well. And we trust John's judgment on this.
Hell yeah.
I am a pretty simple guy when it comes to broadcasting. For my entire career, I have shown up in a studio. Somebody has pointed to a microphone. They have said, this is how you turn it on. This is how you turn it off. This is the button that you push if you have to cough. And the rest is up to us. So I never really had to address any of this. I've since now, over the last couple of months, bought a couple different microphones so that I can go out to SDFC training and interview different players and hopefully improve the quality of the interview from what it was that I was doing previously, which was mostly on my cell phone. So, John, we look forward to you making this even more enjoyable for the listeners. Now it's just up to us on the content. We can't complain anymore about the quality of it. So good job on that. And thank you again. And also, I just want to say, for anybody that's listening to the podcast, if this is your first time and you like it, feel free to share it. Feel free to share it. We're going to spend some time talking about the Padres. We're going to spend some time talking about what it was that happened in soccer over the weekend, locally and internationally. We have a guest on a Monday. Eric Gomez is from San Diego and Tijuana. Grew up in this area, San Diego State alum, works for ESPN, and is in Mexico City. That's where he works. Eric writes a lot of stories about the Mexican national team, about club soccer in Mexico, about NBA. There's a lot of international games that now go to Mexico City. Mexico City, whether it's the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, it is definitely on the radar for some of the sports leagues that are rooted in the United States. Eric writes about all this stuff. Again, grew up both sides of the border. So we will talk to him about what it was that happened between the Mexican national team and the U.S. men's national team in the Gold Cup final, which was, I think, deservedly won by Mexico, dominated the match. I know there's a lot of belly aching going on afterwards about some of the stuff that happened, some of the referees' calls, whether they were called, whether they weren't called, how this thing all shook out. Of course, the U.S. went right to the podium and started complaining about how they felt like they were robbed and this was unjust. And, of course, this is what happens. And we're going to get into those specifics with Eric Gomez here in a little bit. You talked about it Saturday night. What a match, having had now a day or two to think about it. Like, what a great game at Snapdragon Stadium between SDFC and Houston Dynamo. Like, that was a crazy 7-goal thriller that came down to a 110th minute. I mean, there was a lot going on there. I had some friends that was their first time ever going to Snapdragon Stadium to watch SDFC, and they walked out going, I know the home team didn't win, but that was great. That was a lot of fun. There's some things I think to clean up. There were some things I think that were a little bit sloppy that I'm sure Mikey Vadas and his crew will be addressing this week when we get out there. But all in all, I thought it was really like a fun match. And, you're going to have these kind of games. you're not going to win them all. 9 teams each league make the postseason. So I'm all about that. If people walked out of that building going, I would rather the 4-3 was in favor of SDFC. But hey, that was a lot of fun, wasn't it? And I think the answer probably, John, would be yes at this point in season number 1 for SDFC. So, some things to clean up and some things that happen out there that we haven't seen. We haven't seen SDFC give up 4. So, all in all, I thought it was really a fun game to be a part of in the broadcast booth. And, as disappointed as people might be and not capitalizing on an opportunity to go up by 4 points in the Western Conference, all in all, I still would have to say, we were told there's going to be a lot of high-scoring games with SDFC, and that was one of them.
That definitely felt like what you prepared me for heading into the season. You're like, they're going to score a lot, but they're probably going to give up a lot. That's what that was. I know we've been using this Bill James quote about losing to talk about baseball, where it's like, if you're a good team, you understand when you lose, you can't win them all. When you're a bad team and you lose, it's like, well, you just get used to it. It's the 500 teams where you're like living and dying. I walked out of this one going, yeah, can't win them all. I thought they played kind of sloppy. I thought SDFC played kind of sloppy. You're also going to have sloppy games. Vancouver, who SDFC is still first in the standings in the West. Vancouver, who's second, lost 3-0 to Galaxy, I think. So, who's a terrible team. So, SDFC still sitting on top. They'll clean some things up. It was wildly entertaining. I watched this game at Fair Play at North Park with a buddy of mine that I'm trying to convince to be an SDFC fan. And by the end of it, he was like, that was disappointing. And I was like, yeah. And then a beat went by. He was like, fun game though. Really fun game. He's like, I'm just bummed SDFC lost. I was like, yeah, that's about the right way to put it. You had warned me that you thought Houston was going to play for a draw. They very much did not. They were hyper aggressive and they played a great game. And I just kept thinking about, there was this thing in the NBA playoffs where Kristaps Porzingis had a head injury. He had blood running down his head. They put this big bandage on his head. The blood was still running down. It went into his mouth, so his teeth got all bloody. And there's a point where he's standing on the sidelines. He's got blood running down his face into his mouth, and he's just smiling. He's just laughing. And it was like every Celtics fan I knew took a screenshot of that and posted on social media this is the most badass picture. This could be an album cover, all this stuff. I'm waiting for someone to do that with CJ Dos Santos because the end of this game, the last 10 minutes of this game, 15 minutes of this game, CJ Dos Santos is playing and there's just blood running down his probably broken nose into his mouth. He's spitting blood everywhere, refusing to come out of the game. And, I appreciated that decision. I was very nervous of seeing the backup goalkeeper for the first time because I didn't see the friendly. Seeing the backup keeper for the first time in a game of that much importance when it was pretty obvious that the game was in the balance. But yeah, there's I'm still searching for a really cool picture of CJ Dos Santos just screaming and angry with blood dripping down his face, because it kind of personified what a cool game it was. It was just a very good competitive game between two teams who were playing about equally as good as each other.
Yeah, and CJ has a choice to make for which goalkeeper kit he wants to wear. Does he want to wear the red one or the yellow one? Chose to wear the yellow one, yeah. And boy, the contrast of the blood on the yellow jersey and the shorts. There's this cool moment, I don't know if they showed it on television, I haven't watched the broadcast yet, but where the players actually formed a circle around CJ Dos Santos because he had to change his shorts on the field because his shorts had all sorts of blood. So he, instead of having to go run over to the sideline and find a bit of privacy, the team formed a circle around him like a huddle, and CJ changed his shorts right there in the middle of it as well. Yeah, I was listening to some of the Houston podcasts during the week, and they're like, listen, this team stinks. It can't score. So why not just play 5 at the back and try to eke out a draw out of this one? A couple of things we didn't know. They had a pretty significant player return from injury. His name is Lawrence Anali. He is a German player who joined them last year, got hurt in his second game, blew out his ACL, and has just started coming back. He's played a handful of minutes. This is the player who scored the first goal. John, have you ever seen, who the Freeze is? The guy who runs around the outfield? Yeah, the Atlanta Braves.
Yep.
And so this is a bit that the Braves do where, they pick a couple of fans from the stands, and it's just the warning track of the outfield. And it's a running race, and they give some regular fans, a huge head start. And then this guy dressed in this suit, he's some sort of speedster, and he goes running past every time. He just blows right past these fans from the stands. And that's what it looked like watching Lawrence Anali run through the SDFC defenders on that first goal. He just blew right past 3 or 4 different guys. Somebody clocked him at 22, what was it? 22 point something miles per hour. 22.74 miles per hour on that goal. That's the second fastest time recorded in Major League Soccer. This was the game, the first time that I really, really thought SDFC missed Willie Camato, who is the fastest player, either him or Alex Mighton, fastest players on the team. Because we saw it early, we said it on the broadcast. Oscar Verhoeven does a lot of things really well, but man, they were just running right past him. And I think Anali probably runs past a lot of guys. He totally changed the way that Houston had played up until this point. So, I don't know that they had prepared for that, not prepared for that. Little sloppy. First goal was kind of weird. Second goal was just, hey, listen, Yepe guesses wrong on a defensive decision. Doesn't happen often. Happened here. Escobar scores an amazing goal. The penalty, to John's point, is the third one. That was tough to watch. And then the fourth one is just another. I mean, they didn't do a ton, but I think scoring 3 times, I like our chances. But again, it was just one of those nights.
I know you don't often get to you don't really get to pick which players you're going to interview when you go out for training. But I left that game going like, God, I want to listen to a Luca Bombino interview right now, because he got run past so often on those long balls, and you could tell that either he didn't gauge the speed of the other guy correctly, or he just read the ball wrong, or whatever. He had a pretty tough defensive game. He also, at one point, I think I posted on Blue Sky, I was like, Luca Bombino owes CJ a new nose, because that CJ getting clocked in the face with an elbow was entirely Luca's fault. Like, Luca just did not have enough speed on the pass back to CJ. CJ had to come out and meet it before the striker could. They got there at the same time, and it was a mess. But on the other side of it, Luca Bombino scores his first ever MLS goal. It's a great goal, like just a fantastic goal that you don't expect to see from a defensive player like that. I also thought Milan Alaski at the end of the game was basically playing defense. Like, he was playing on the back line for SDFC and was doing great. Which I guess adds more versatility to their roster. But yeah, Luca Bombino, rough game on defense, had his first ever MLS goal, and it was a brilliant one. My guess, having heard your previous interview with him, is he's probably pissed about the game. He's pissed about defensive assignments. He's pissed that they lost. He's not really taking much away from the scoring the goal, because it's more of a team effort, et cetera, et cetera. But what a weird game for someone, especially someone 18, to have, where it's like you're a defender and your defense was kind of targeted a little bit, same as Verhoeven, but offensively you almost helped your team win. So yeah.
I mean, a weird pass. I mean, it's a weird thing, right? Because it's something I think SDFC, as I thought about it after the game, this is like the third time in 4 games where something's gone wrong on a pass backwards.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You had the own goal against Minnesota United, or when you're playing Minnesota United, the own goal from McVay, and if that tells you anything, it tells you, this can literally happen to anybody.
Correct.
Mano Dua in his first start, remember, he passes it back, the ball gets taken away, and then that's a goal.
Yeah.
And then you had Bombino, and he didn't put enough on it, and I think maybe he thought because CJ plays so high, that's always a tricky thing for defenders, because you don't want to put too much on it.
Well, because you don't want what happened to McVay to happen, where it goes blowing past him into the net.
Right, and I don't know if he thought CJ's coming out, because CJ was playing really, really far out of net. And if he thought CJ was going to come meet it, and CJ kind of gets caught flat-footed, and he's trying to say, well, here's Ponce coming in. Do I have enough time? Do I not? It just was, I don't know if it took a weird hop on the turf. They put new grass down after the Shakira concert. I thought it held up pretty well. I'm not complaining the turf. I know there's been a lot of that going around. But did it take a funny bounce there as I watched it? It looked like it's kind of slowed down. I don't know. It just was, I think you're right. I think Bombino would probably say, I got to be better there. But, this is now like the third time in 4 games where something has gone wrong that has directly led to a goal, passing it back towards the SDFC goal. But, that needs to be cleaned up, but that's not going to change. That's not going to change at all.
Maybe the new grass was slowing the ball down a lot, because that's where SDFC is always so crisp with their passing, and they were just not. And on the other side, Houston, their passing through the midfield was not great, but their long balls, they were killing SDFC on long balls. So maybe they just realized, like, hey, this new grass is really slowing things down. We're not prepared to play on it, so we're going to go with these long balls. And SDFC was just like, no, we can figure this out. We can figure out how this grass works. And then they just kind of ran out of time.
Yeah, it's not the same Houston team as it was last year, but just for what it's worth. Last year's Houston team, a team that's been playing since 2005, was its best regular season ever in terms of points and wins. And they still have a lot of that structure here. I'd figured at some point it wasn't going to be like a who you play, but when you play them kind of thing. Got off to a terrible start. I don't think they had any wins in their first 9 games. So, just was one of those games. It just was one of those games again. And they have a really, really special player in this Anali player.
Yeah.
I was wondering how much we were going to see from him. It was his first start of the year, and he was a huge difference maker.
Also,
so, anyhow.
Chucky didn't get the start. He came in late-ish, and it seemed like he kind of ran out of time to do. Did I get this right? I don't know if you've started your research for Saturday's game. Did Chicago fire who they were playing in Chicago on Saturday? Did they score 7 goals this weekend?
Was it this weekend that they did that? I didn't see it if they did, but I will trust you on that.
Well, I might have been reading it backwards. I was looking somewhere. Here we go. I was looking here, and it was. Nope, sorry. I was reading it upside down. It was a month ago they scored 7 goals. This last Saturday they lost 2-1 to Cincinnati. The week before, 3-2 over Charlotte. Okay, I saw 7 goals. I was like, now is not the time to be facing a team who just scored 7 goals. But I was reading it. Their last 5 matches, their form or whatever, I think I was reading it top to bottom when it should have been bottom to top.
I know they did. We'll save the Padres for after we chat with Eric, because we're going to talk some Padres with Eric Gomez. But let us turn our attention to our guest from ESPN. We'll talk about the Gold Cup. Mexico wins its second straight Gold Cup and their 10th overall. They are currently the kings of CONCACAF, and the rest of us are genuflecting at the altar of Javier Aguirre and the Mexican national team. Eric Gomez, there's a little bit of controversy in this, so we'll start there. All right, well, let's talk about that Gold Cup final, that controversial Gold Cup final. Let me just read some of these quotes here because they are hilarious. From Chris Richards, who played very well, when he was talking about the Jorge Sanchez alleged handball in the box, he said, quote, "Homie palmed the ball like Shaq in the box." And then on the game-winning goal for Mexico, Chris Richards said, on the other end, we had a block. It was offsides. In any other league, it would have been called offsides. But again, that's CONCACAF for you. They hate us. Here to apologize on behalf of El Tri and Mexico is our friend Eric Gomez from ESPN. Do you have any guilt? Are you carrying any guilt into this interview at all today after this robbery from CONCACAF?
Oh, goodness. I can't even remember when it was 2015 when Mexico played Panama in the semifinal, and there were like 2 penalty kick calls in favor of Mexico that were like 10 times more controversial. We didn't have VAR back then. There was actually talk amongst the media that Mexico should have intentionally missed at least one of those 2 PKs because it was just so blatant, right? This absolutely pales to what I'm talking about. It is literally not even on that same level. So we have seen an abundance of terrible calls, questionable calls, whatever you want to call it, within these CONCACAF tournaments, whether it's Gold Cup or Nations League or the Champions Cup or whatever. It is literally the level of play and the level of officiating that we have in this confederation. And I'm glad the U.S. has finally joined the rest of the world in that whole "the refs hate us" club. It is about time.
Okay, let me just follow up then, because Mauricio Pochettino made the point several times during his post-match press conference that he was not crying about what it was that happened out there on the pitch. Is he being honest, or do you sense is he crying a little bit about it?
Well, he's Latino, so he knows he's crying. Right? Like he would have said otherwise if he didn't think it. This is part and parcel of sports. It's kind of a no-win situation, right? You complain about the refs in any sport. You complain about the umpires in baseball. It's sour grapes. But if you don't, then there's going to be a certain part of your fan base, or maybe most of your fan base, depending on how egregious it was, that are going to say that you just didn't step up, in defense of your team, in defense of your fan base. So it's kind of a no-win situation. I understand that he's going to come out and talk about it. You and I were texting during the game. I certainly didn't know at that point in time whether it would be called or not, because it certainly wasn't intentional. The ball was behind Sanchez while he was falling down when it made contact with his hand. It was just kind of one of those coincidental things. But we've seen non, incidental contact, how do you, how would you say, this very sort of incidental contact being called a handball and a PK in the box. So I really did not know what to expect. I would have been okay if they called it, and I was okay that they didn't call it. At the end of the day, we're in this very strange moment in officiating, not just within world soccer, but I think most sports where technology has kind of come in to a place where we expect it to fix all of the ills of the game. But then when something doesn't go your way, then you have twice as much to whine about it. So it's a very, very strange thing. I just saw this in Wimbledon the other day. So it's a strange time, and again, CONCACAF is its own thing. It's pretty special. Let's just leave it special. Yeah.
Wait, I wanna jump in here because it was a part of the Pochettino quote that Darren didn't read or didn't get to yet, which is the part where he insinuated that had it been the other way, had it been the American touching the ball, that Mexico would have gotten the PK, and that is such a weird position to have for someone who just got here to be a part of this country's soccer federation, right, fairly recently, to be like, well, those CONCACAF refs, they're always against us. And it's like, what? First of all, my initial follow-up, had I been in the room when he said that, is what do you mean by that? What are you insinuating? Did you show up 5 minutes ago and decide that CONCACAF wants Mexico to win over America and we're just screwed forever because of it? Because that was the weirdest part of the entire quote to me.
Well, let's put this in MLB terms. If Mike Schilt goes out and says, Padres playing the Dodgers and, the ump missed this call, but if it were in favor of the Dodgers, he would have made that call. You're insinuating that clearly the Dodgers are this favored team within Major League Baseball because they're this historic institution, blah, blah, blah. Pochettino's doing the same thing, right? And he's seen it both ways. He's Argentinian, so he knows that Argentina holds a special place within world football. He's coached some very important teams, but even within that framework, he's coached Chelsea and Tottenham in the Premier League. He went out there and said the same thing about Manchester United or Manchester City or Liverpool at some point in time. So this is a game that many of these soccer managers, of these that these coaches play from time to time when things don't go their way. I think it's very well established within CONCACAF that the two most important teams are the U.S. and Mexico, not just trophy-wise, but economically speaking, fandom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the part of that quote where I think that he was very well aware that he was crying, right? He was, quote, crying. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think we should probably spend a second on this just because, I'm sure somebody's listening to this conversation and probably smacking their palm to their forehead going, wait a second, what game are you guys watching? Because we all saw what happened where the Mexican defender goes to the ground and his hand does land on top of the ball. But it is not black and white, to Eric's point from a moment ago, that, I even saw it. There's what's his name? Jeff Carlisle, who's like a good reporter, a good, credible reporter.
Great reporter.
In his match report, he wrote that they missed the call. Those are his words, that they missed the call. No, nobody missed that. Everybody saw that. But you have to interpret it. It is not black and white that if a hand or part of the arm touches the ball inside of the box, that it's automatically a penalty. Now, if somebody wants to make that the rule somewhere down the road, that's fine. But the laws of the game don't say that. A player is considered to have made their body unnaturally bigger when the position, hand, arm, not a consequence of or justifiably by the player's body movement for that specific situation. That's the key phrase there. And you do have to. It is judgment, right? We would all agree on that. Whether it's the referee on the field or whether it goes up to the video booth, it's still going to be a judgment call about, was this player acting naturally? Was his body moving in that direction naturally? And as a result, the ball ended up under his hand. And everybody's entitled to an opinion about that. Maybe Maybe Jorge Sanchez in a split second analyzed and goes, I'm going to dare this referee to call that a handball in the box in front of 60,000 Mexican fans. Maybe, but I doubt it. I don't think that was really the case. I think it was probably just his natural movement. And listen, I'm a U.S. fan here, so I can say this. I do. I don't really need more interpretation. I don't need more judgment. It's the judgment of the referee that's what happened right there, Eric, or am I misreading the situation?
No, I mean, it wasn't just the central referee, the main referee. It was all the folks in the VAR booth who have the luxury of time and different camera angles to look at it. The way VAR works, for those who don't know, is the guys that are in the booth, similar to the NFL, similar to Major League Baseball, are looking at that play and can help the referee in charge make that decision. Where it differs from the NFL or from Major League Baseball is that ultimately the main referee gets a chance to look at it again, right? So Major League Baseball, they're just kind of waiting around to see what the call is, basically, and New York's going to tell them if they were right or they were wrong. With VAR, the referees in the booth take a look at the play and they say, "Hey, you might need to look at this, right? So your initial call might be wrong." They don't say you're definitely wrong. The central referee goes out to that little booth, takes a look, takes a peek into that screen, looks at the different camera angles, talks to the referees in the booth, and says, "All right, what are you looking at here? Like, what should I be looking at here?" And then ultimately makes his decision very much a la NFL, announces it to the crowd, and there you have it. Um, the main thing here, the main argument is Sanchez was looking at the ball and then he apparently palmed it. I think we have the luxury of super slow mo to make these sort of decisions on our part and say, "Hey, that's egregious. Like that should have been called." You play that at 1x speed, you play that at the actual game speed. You're talking about zero point 0.2, zero point 0.3 seconds at the most. At what point is a player supposed to look at the ball while he's falling and say, "You know what? I'm going to touch this ball with my hand as I'm falling"? It was just basically impossible to do. Ultimately, I think that's the decision that was made. And you could argue, again, like it's one of those 50-50 plays, right? And I think that's where Pochettino's going with his quote. Had this been the other way around, they would have called it. Well, you know what? Who knows? Because
Mm-hmm.
Mexico have been on the receiving end of some controversial calls in favor of the United States. It's just everybody's pointing fingers. You're definitely angry. You're definitely upset that you lost this championship match. You want to pin it on something, and to make matters worse, a few minutes after that, Mexico are called offside on the game-winning goal, and then VAR does step in and say, "Hey, you know what? It was a goal." So that's a double whammy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, but like it's still opinion. Like it's still a matter of opinion, Like,
Yeah.
and the referee could have said that was a handball in the box, and there's not a thing I don't think that the video crew would have done about it. They would have said, "Well, it is his interpretation of what happened here that he did that purposefully, or even if he didn't do it purposefully, he did it to gain some sort of advantage." Which, again, I didn't really see the advantage that Mexico was getting there. It's not like Malik Tillman was waiting to pounce on that and he scooped it away from him. It didn't appear to me like there were any U.S. players even anywhere in the area. So like we're asking referees to do something that is literally impossible, which is interpret what the motivation is behind any individual play happening in the split second. And I just think we're asking a lot, to your point from earlier, Eric. Like that's asking a lot of people, not only to see it and analyze it, but now we also have to guess what the actual motivation was behind this physical thing happening with these world-class athletes. And I don't know about you, but that doesn't feel like it's set up to succeed in my situation.
Until we all have Neuralinks in our brains, and VAR is connected to Elon Musk's technology, and we're able to determine what the intent was behind every single play. We won't be able to know. I mean, yeah, it's such a bang bang play. And again, I agree with you. If the referee calls that a PK in the heat of the moment, there's literally nothing that VAR can do to overturn that. But to your point, it was pretty much the same the other way around, right?
Yeah.
So again, I think it's the double whammy part of this as well, that Mexico do have a VAR decision go for them 10 minutes later. Ultimately, that decides the match. I still heard,
Yeah.
players talking about how he was offside, he wasn't offside, and you do have different interpretations of the offside rule depending on where you play. So the Premier League is the strictest, and I would argue the most ridiculous one of all, because if, your pinky toe or your big toe is ahead of the defender, and they have that computer animation come up on screen and they show that you are literally zero point 0.2 inches ahead of the defender, that's going to be called offside. Whereas in other leagues, maybe it's half of your body, or you literally have to be on the ball for that to happen. Something, it's such a strange sport sometimes. I understand the frustration. Again, every single soccer fan has been on the receiving end of a weird call. I mean, Mexico fans will still cry about 2014 and that World Cup game against the Netherlands. No
Mm.
era penal, blah, blah, blah. We were robbed, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just part and parcel of the sport, man, at this point in time.
All right, last thing about the refs very quickly, and then I have a question that I want actually both of you guys to answer in this conversation, the two people that are not me. Number one, I appreciate, as a fairly new soccer fan, I appreciate the fact, I saw someone this morning refer to soccer officiating as being vibes-based. They were actually talking about the Sounders game where like the goalkeeper got injured in stoppage time, and it was really bad, and the coaches just went like, end the game. Like, we don't need extra time. Like, this is too serious. Game's over. End the game. Which is like a thing that if you tried to do in any other like American sport, like I know there's a minute left in the fourth quarter, but end the game. We're moving on. Like, people would be like, no, you can't do that. So I appreciate the fact that they add like humanity and there's like kind of feeling in this, and that's why when we go 15 minutes after the Gold Cup final talking about nothing but the refereeing and the rules about handballs and everything, I'm like, we've missed something. So I want to bring it back to the soccer, and then you guys can bring it back to the refereeing if you want. Mexico was the better team. They were clearly the better team, and they won because they were the better team. My question, and again, I will take answers from either or both of you, is if Christian Pulisic is on this team, is it closer? Does that give America the advantage? Like, are we talking about the refs today because no one wants to admit the fact that Christian Pulisic may have been the difference between U.S. winning or not yesterday?
I mean, there are two sides to this. Christian Pulisic, on one hand, is the Mexico killer, right? This is a guy that gets up for that rivalry every single time. I mean, I don't think there's anything in life he enjoys more than playing against Mexico. So he's going to give you that edge. During the course of the rivalry's history, we've had players like this. Landon Donovan was one of those players. On the Mexico side, I mean, I can name Cuauhtemoc Blanco, Jared Borghetti, Chicharito, clearly Giovanni Dos Santos. A lot of those players that have come through the Mexico pipeline have just absolutely loved playing against the United States, and they bring their absolute best to the table. So, to answer your question, I think this is absolutely a different game with Christian Pulisic on the pitch. I mean, the U.S. media, soccer media, and their fans were trying to kind of figure out what this team was before the tournament. During the tournament itself, Diego Luna, a fantastic midfielder for Real Salt Lake, just breaks through and says, "Hey, it's all good, guys. I got this." It helps that Diego Luna is Mexican American in the context of this rivalry. So I think the feeling was that he was going to take that mantle up. It didn't happen. He completely disappeared during the final. But on the other side, I would say, hey, the US was missing maybe 7 or 8 starters during that game.
Yeah.
Still, those guys were there for the Copa America last year, and they just got absolutely crushed. Those guys were mostly there for the Nations League earlier this year. They didn't get past the semifinal. So I would argue that this is a budding issue for Mauricio Pochettino and his staff, because his team, his A squad, his A team, they're not performing to the level that they should be. And this B team, while plucky and talented and whatnot, they're definitely not good enough to get past the likes of even a Mexico, a regional rival. So why should they when they get to play maybe Brazil or Spain or Germany in the World Cup?
Yeah.
And I was hoping Eric was not going to get to that point, because that would have been my point, is that I just saw the U.S. not too long ago finish 4th out of 4 teams in the Nations League. So I'm not ready to say, for as much as it does seem, to Eric's point, that Pulisic does get up for these matches, I'm not willing to say that that group under this coaching staff yet would have fired on all cylinders. And I think they would have gotten to the final just based on what it is that we saw in this tournament, which was a little bit underwhelming, if we're being honest. But I don't know that I would be ready to say automatically that, you know, that group would have been firing, just because I'm not convinced. And I don't know where this goes from here. The World Cup is in less than a year's time. And right now, Eric, I don't know how you feel about Mexico. I feel really kind of lost about the U.S. I don't love where the U.S. is at. How are you feeling with less than a year to go before the World Cup kicks off? Right there, not too far from where you're talking to us today. You're in Mexico City. How are you feeling now after back-to-back Gold Cups and a Nations League sprinkled into the middle of it all?
Yeah, just a few miles south, Estadio Azteca. Although we're all a little worried that the renovations are not going too well for that building.
Really?
Yeah, man. I mean, every time I'm down there, there's still cranes and everything's kind of blocked off. They're, I mean, I'm exaggerating. They're not shooting down drones, but they're really kind of closing off the airspace there so you can't see inside. So that's, again, not a very good sign in my mind, but we'll see how that goes. You know, to your question, Mexico is at the level that they're usually at, historically speaking, which is you're too good for CONCACAF, or you're winning these regional tournaments, but that really doesn't mean anything on the world stage, because you're not at the level of a Brazil or a Germany or an Argentina or even an England or something like that. You know, every single team that I just named would have the advantage over Mexico, even playing in Mexico during the World Cup next year. The talent that Mexico has at a European level. So Santiago Jimenez comes off the bench in the 80th minute of a game that Mexico is already ahead in. That guy should be your main striker. He's nowhere near that at this point in time. You're relying on a guy who's 34 years old, who will be 35 by the time the World Cup comes around, Raul Jimenez, to be your main goal scorer. There are some bright spots. A lot of good young players are coming through, but they're not consolidated yet. Mexico does not have a world star. They don't have a guy that even the most casual soccer fan anywhere in the world will point to and say, hey, that guy is class. That guy is great. What they do have is an emerging generation of players who are finally trying to make their mark at a European level, because one of the issues that Mexico has always had is convincing players to make the jump, to leave the safety and the security of Liga MX and go into European football, where it's definitely harder and definitely, not as easy to make your name in. And they have a 16-year-old kid who plays across the border from both of you guys in Tijuana, named Gilberto Mora, who's just been absolutely fantastic. You want to know how vibes-based CONCACAF is? They have trophies for everything during this tournament. The best young player, no shade to this kid, he was fantastic during the tournament, went to a player from Guatemala. I'm to believe that, Gil Mora is what, 52 years old or something? Like, why didn't he win best young player? He's 16 years old and he's starting in a Gold Cup final. He was, I would say, for large stretches of that match, the best guy on the pitch,
Yeah.
just technically speaking. And he doesn't win that trophy. It's insane.
So I do. I'm glad you brought him up, because this is a perfect transition. There are 2 players here where you talk about, who's identifiable on behalf of the Mexican national team. I was going to ask about Mora. Now that Xolos gets underway coming up on Friday, by the way, I don't know that he's going to be ready to play on Friday night at Estadio Caliente. But the other one, obviously, is somebody who I get to see an awful lot of, Eric, and that would be Irving Chucky Lozano, who did get called up by the team, and then his hamstring got a little wonky on him, and he was unable to make the window. 70 caps for Mexico and 18 goals. That's a lot. I think he might qualify. This was not, 9 goals, I think, in the 6 matches. So 9 goals and 3 allowed. The defense looks like it's okay. But, that might be an exciting player. Again, health obviously permitting. But where do you think now at the end of this tournament? And, and listen, Chucky's not been a part of these three runs, these back-to-back Gold Cups or the Nations League. But where do you think his standing is right now with the national team?
I mean, he's been injured, right? And I think that's always been the main concern with him. He was mentioned on the Mexican broadcast last night. They didn't forget about him. So I think that that's a good sign. I think that whenever Javier Aguirre, the team's manager, is asked about him, he is very quick to say that he's a player that continues to be on his mind, continues to be on his radar. This is the guy who, at least for Mexican fans in Mexico, kind of controversially left European soccer to go to SDFC. Um, Ultimately, you don't blame him for that. He has a killer contract. He lives in San Diego. Like, I'm jealous of him. You know what I mean? At this point in time. So, and prior to this unfortunate injury, he was tearing up the league, which is what you want guys that are coming over from Europe to do in MLS. We've seen plenty of players come from the top rung of European football and struggle when they head into MLS or maybe even Liga MX. So it's good to see that he's not one of those guys. He'll be 30, I think, by the time the World Cup comes around, 30, 31. So you're definitely not aging him out of the tournament. And I think Mexico, offensively speaking, to your point, they do need more options to, be a little more dangerous, be a little more creative. I think we saw Mora being that guy for Mexico, but he is definitely a player who will do that in the middle of the pitch. You still need wingers who are able to provide that speed and that breadth on the pitch. And Chucky Lozano historically has been one of those players. I mean, who doesn't remember that 2018 World Cup game against Germany where he just comes flying down the pitch with Chicharito and Andres Guardado scores the goal that ultimately beats Germany in that World Cup game. So he's definitely somebody who I think most Mexican fans will agree probably needs to be on that roster at this point, given the roster situation and what he can bring to the table. So I think he has everything to gain here.
I have a question to kind of tie Chucky and another person you just mentioned. Again, fairly new soccer fan, and I come from a world of people who kind of put down soccer. That's not our American sport because they're faking injuries all the time and blah, blah, blah. Earlier this season, I was looking up, like, how often does Chucky Lozano get injured? And I found a picture of him where, like, someone had ripped his face open with their cleat. And I was like, how do you keep playing after something like that? And then, as of a few days ago, transfixed by the handsomeness of Raul Jimenez, I dug into the Raul Jimenez story where he, like, almost died on the pitch from, like, a head-to-head collision, like, has a giant scar running down the side of his head. And all of a sudden, I'm now acutely aware of, like, these guys that are out there. Of course, I knew they could get, like, knee injuries, ankle injuries, something like that. But I'm like, this is really dangerous. How does Raul Jimenez go back to playing in an aggressive style needed to play at this level when he's got that in the back of his mind? So is this more rare than I'm making it out to be, or are, like, head injuries a more common thing than most Americans think in soccer?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so common that many countries, including the US, have kind of forbidden youth players to use their heads for headers until they get to a certain age, right? To allow for a cranial development and and avoid concussions. So it's definitely on the mind of uh, the people who run this sport, even at the youth level. With Raul, when I last spoke to him during a Mexico press conference, I asked him about that specifically. It's like, do you have any sort of reservation when it comes to going up there and fighting for a ball in the air and knowing full well that something like that, God forbid, could happen again? And he
Yeah.
said no, and I get it. He said, if I was afraid of that, then I wouldn't be good at my job. So I'd just walk away and that'd be okay. And I think everybody agrees with that. But, this is a sport like most sports where you have a very small window time wise to play at the top level if you can. And that's why it's so hard for some of these guys to walk away because they know that'll be the end of it. And they can transition into other other facets of the sport. They can become coaches, they can become media members, what have you. But the thrill of fulfilling that childhood dream and being a pro player, that only happens once. And this is a guy who I think has had a lot of iconic moments for club and country with Mexico. I was in the stadium in 2013 when he scored on a bicycle kick to basically save Mexico's World Cup campaign. And then we had the Graham Susie game, and the U.S. basically allowing Mexico to be at that World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
But Raul Jimenez was part of that comeback. So at the end of the day, um, I don't blame him for that. But I think it's still something that if I were in his shoes, I would definitely think twice about, because it was rough going. I mean, if you guys out there watching, listening, don't know what we're talking about, definitely Google that, but it's gnarly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching that game that morning, as a matter of fact. You mentioned we talked a little bit about Gilberto Mora, who plays for Tijuana. I was at the game where he scored, I think, his first career goal. How much longer, I guess this is a question of constant speculation, how much longer we're going to have the opportunity to see him in Tijuana. Obviously, he's going to get sold at some point. I guess the question is, does he get sold to a bigger club in Liga MX before he ends up going to Europe, which is what people think the trajectory is going to be? But what do you see, like, how do you see his pathway unfolding here over the next couple of years?
You know what? It is so rare in world football to have a kid do so well at 16. I think it's less rare for certain countries, your Brazils, your Argentinas, and some of those European countries. But for Mexico, it is basically uncharted territory. So I think what's going to happen here, given that FIFA ruled a few years ago that they can't make those international transfers until they're 18, but they can definitely sign a pre-contract or whatever, have that transfer kind of locked and loaded until that player turns 18. I would expect Club Tijuana to be very aggressive here when they get an offer. Uh, this is not developmental league situation. We're not going to get teams from the Netherlands or from Belgium or from France coming to get Gilberto Mora. We're talking about the top tier. We're talking about Spain. We're talking about England. We're talking about Italy, Germany. So they're going to have their offers to pick and choose from. I think ultimately the player and the team's owner will have to get together and say, definitely his parents too. I mean, Gilberto Mora is the son of a former Mexican professional soccer player who did play for the Mexican national team, and is working currently for Club Tijuana. So at the end of the day, they do need to be careful. He can't move until after the World Cup. So I think that helps him in a way because he'll be able to sort of maintain that level of activity, that level of play. He'll be a mainstay for the Mexican national team. But after the World Cup, I think, Xolos will have some eight-figure offers on the table for him. He's that good. So I think this is again uncharted territory for Mexican soccer, but it's exciting for sure, and I think it's exciting for the Hank family because they're short on dough, right? And I'm being very ironic because they basically own half of Mexico. So
Yeah, I know. I can look out my front window and I can see some of their property as well. Cholo's going to be in good this year. I mean, 2 points out of a playoff spot last year. Actually turned it on kind of late in the season here. You and I talk about this all the time. I would love to.
I know.
I would love to see a couple of teams in our region here thriving, and obviously we need Club Tijuana to pick up its end.
Yeah, I think I'm very much on the ball when I look at their roster and I go, yeah, no, they're not going to do anything this season. I think the Gold Cup, the Club World Cup, has made it so that this kind of transfer off season has been weird to say the least. Not a lot of players moving out and about. I think that ultimately benefits Tijuana. And what I mean by that is, you said it, they were 2 points out of a playoff spot last season. We're not seeing a lot of teams around them are definitely close to their level getting better. So I think that this team, they did lose a few players that were sold off and came back from loans and what have you. But Solos have been one of the few teams that have made moves in the offseason. So they brought in an Ecuadorian midfielder, Julio Palacios, who's I think is really good. They got a defender also from Ecuador on loan from a French team who I think should do quite well in Mexican soccer. They brought in a couple of other players who are from the French league. I don't know what type of business they're doing over there in France
Whoa.
right now, but a full international for Cameroon will be starring for Tijuana next season. So I would say that they are definitely making a run at the playoffs this season. Again, barring injuries and freak uh, VAR situations, but they've got a good team on their hands, and I think that they will definitely have a chance at being at least in the top eight next season.
All right. You're wearing a Padres shirt. Unless, John, you have another soccer
I am.
question.
Here we go.
No, let's just get into Padres. I could go all day on my dumb soccer questions, but I don't need to waste anyone's
No, I
time.
mean, I'm good with that, too. I mean, I could do this.
I only have one. I have one question, and it's just because Eric was going through the roster a little bit, and it's because I have this thing stuck in my head that I read this morning. Ricky Rubio, who used to be in the NBA, did an interview with I think like a Spanish paper. I read like a translated version of it this morning, where he was talking about how much it fucked him up mentally to become a professional athlete at 14. And he was like, you just no longer can fit in with other kids your age because you are a professional. But then when you go and you're like, oh, I'll fit in with the adults, he's like, the problem is you're the superstar. So they're all looking at you like you're the one who's going to carry us. So you can't fit in there either, but you're not old enough to be a leader. And he's like, all of this turns into the most isolating situation you could possibly imagine with so much pressure put on top of you, leading to my question of you were listing people off. I was like, man, I hope they have another kid that's anywhere near as young as Mora so that he doesn't feel completely alone and isolated in this situation where everyone's just sitting around going like, be really good at soccer so we can ship you halfway across the world to go play with people that you've never met in a place you've never been.
Here's what helps in that situation, and it's not a blanket statement. I mean, you could definitely have parents who did the thing professionally as well and who can speak to that experience
Right.
and kind of guide you. But I think that that's ultimately the big difference between a guy like Ricky Rubio and a guy like Gilberto Mora. Not to go completely off topic, but I was recently in northern Mexico in Hermosillo interviewing a kid by the name of Kareem Lopez. And you're going to hear that name come the 2026 NBA draft. So he is on track to be the first Mexican player in the NBA's history to be a first round pick, and he's likely going to be a lottery pick. He had just turned 18, and he had a very similar experience to Ricky Rubio because he was in the Spanish league at the age of 14. Now, that was clearly on my list of questions. I asked those questions. His dad was a Mexican national team professional basketball player who, went to Division II in NCAA to play his college ball, and he did so absolutely isolated from the rest of his family, and it was literally didn't know how to speak English at the time. And those types of experiences can be passed down, right? And they can definitely kind of help you navigate these situations. Now, Kareem Lopez right now, he's in New Zealand and he's playing in the Australian League and he's playing for the New Zealand Breakers. And what helps is again, like his family, his mom, dad, sister, they travel out there and they're with him. With Gilberto Mora, it's the same. Like his dad works for the team. So if there's anybody who can help him out and just kind of ground him, it's him. Now, we're going to get into a situation where the cat's out of the bag. Like Club Tijuana is a regional team. Everybody in the Tijuana San Diego region who cares about soccer knew about Gilberto Mora going into the tournament. Now he is literally an international star. So things are going to change. But I think that he does have the support at home. I don't know, if it's within the team itself, but again, his dad works for the team, so that's got to help for sure.
Can I tell you, speaking of wanting to protect young players and worrying about their future, how horrifying it is that I see Lamine Yamal hanging out with Neymar? I'm like, that nothing about that feels good to me at all. I'm like, wait, what? Why is this happening here? Please get on an airplane and go back to Spain. That cannot be a good thing at all, right?
Please,
Like,
please FaceTime Messi instead of hanging out with Neymar.
Yeah.
right. That is not good. I do want to talk. You're wearing a Padre shirt, and Eric, obviously somebody who grew up here, still a Padre fan, which we always love. There's a great Bill James quote. Padres are 48 and 41, so they're a little
Yeah.
bit better than 500. But the quote is a 500 team, fans of 500 teams overreact to every win and loss. A good team, you know, you can't win them all. 100 loss team, you get used to it. A 500 team, emotionally, you're as good as the last 24 hours. You're a little further removed from it than we are here. But I know you're still dyed in the wool, big time Padre fan. Does that describe you with the Padres? Or are you convinced of anything with regards to 2025?
I can watch a Mexican national team match dispassionately. You know, I can win or lose or draw. I'm good. I grew up a Chicago Bulls fan in the NBA. The Bulls suck. I'm used to it. Um, I am happily divorced from the Chargers, so I can watch any NFL game and I'm okay. If the Padres are messing up in the bottom of the sixth against a team that they should be dominating, even though it's May or whatever, like if they are struggling to beat the Rockies, I have to turn off the TV and maybe take a walk around the block. So that's my level of involvement and passion with the Padres at this point. When they started the season 7-0, I was like, okay, this is great. All they need to do is be 10 games over 500 the rest of the season, 155 games, and that will likely guarantee a wild card spot, right? They are literally 500 since that 7 game winning streak to open the season. So to say that they've been middling, I think is generous given the level of talent that this roster has, especially offensively, that they've underperformed the way that they have. I mean, we can't do anything about just the cavalcade of injuries to the pitching staff, especially the starters. I heard, my reaction to Yu Darvish coming back and pitching against the D-backs was to leap out of bed, and just be that happy that a guy my age, who's 38 years old, going on 39, is going to be picking up the ball for the first time this season. There are some bright spots for sure, but I just think that this team has I think their identity now is to underwhelm unless the stars are aligned. This team, I hate to say it, but they don't feel as battle tested as they should. They just don't show up for certain games, and it drives me crazy. And then you have the odd game where they're down by 6 runs and they come back and they win the thing. So they're pretty confounding.
They are. They are. We have a quote here from AJ Preller talking about the trade deadline, and he did say he was interested in adding a couple of bats. I don't know where exactly that is. John and I speculate maybe that's catcher, and maybe that would be left field. Those seem like the obvious areas here, but do you find it as a Padre fan? Are you convinced one way or the other that this is a team worth investing in at this point? Or to use another AJ Preller quote from earlier this year, has the team told you enough one way or the other about how to approach the trade deadline?
I mean, ultimately, it depends, to me at least, what happens with Michael King and if Yu Darvish is,
Mhm.
again, like even 70% the guy that he usually is, that's going to help. I mean, we don't have Musgrove this season. Dylan Cease definitely took a step back and is not kind of playing up to the usual contract year standards that most of these guys have. So. Um, I'm still very confused that AJ would, I mean, AJ's AJ and he's going to misdirect you if he wants to, and he's going to misdirect rival GMs as part of his chess game. But I would think that a couple of bats, to use his quote, is not nearly what is going to push this team over the top if he's going to go out there and make some moves. Um, I think that Padre fans in general now are a little more wary of these types of aggressive moves that he makes at the deadline because we can look back at 2022 and 2023, especially, And we just had the Washington Nationals come into town, who,
Mm.
as a team, are terrible and fired their GM and their manager. But gee, wouldn't you want to have James Wood playing in this lineup right now? Wouldn't you want to have CJ Abrams anywhere on that field? Mackenzie Gore, I think I'm not as high on Mackenzie Gore as other people are, but he's definitely a guy that would be starting for you right now, with especially with all these injuries. So I think we've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly with these AJ Preller moves over the course of his career as the Padres decision maker. I would be wary because I don't want to see Ethan Salas or Leo DeVries play for any other team somewhere down the road just because we needed a bat in July of 2025. So, I mean, I think that this team, as constructed, can still make the playoffs. Am I as excited that they can go all the way as they were last year? Absolutely not.
Hmm.
I don't think that they have the juice this time around.
You're gun shy. Do you think Fernando Tatis Jr. owes it to the Padres organization to enter the home run derby so he can compete with James Wood, so he can defend? So once and for all, we can add another layer to this ridiculous, never-ending conversation about who won that trade.
I want
Here we have
Fernando.
AJ Preller's best trade versus his worst trade in the home run derby.
Literally, yeah. That's your AJ Preller All Stars right there. I want him to be kind of in a cryo chamber until after the All Star break because Fernando's another one of those guys who has a kind of complicated injury history, and he's heating up right now. So I would assume that I don't want him taking 100 extra swings for the for ESPN's cameras during the All Star break.
He did say he didn't want to be in the All-Star or be in the home run derby because he was having cramps in his obliques, which sounds horribly painful. Like, cramps are painful as is, but right there in like a very sensitive spot, oh God, that sounds awful. I have a Tatis question as well. Again, both of you can take this if you'd like it. There's a couple quotes from Tatis that I read today, and I was like, there's a different tone about him than what I've seen previously. This is one quote that was in Kevin Acey's daily newsletter from Tatis. Quote, "I've been playing good baseball, man. Details. It's just a really good combination of base running, defense. Obviously, we know I can be a way better player offensively, but at the same time, I'm trying to do everything at the same time." And then AC follows that up with stats that show that among NL outfielders, where Tatis' stats rank, and the only real notable one here is he's fifth in stolen bases and sixth in on-base percentage. And I've been saying this for a couple weeks, if not months at this point, which is Tatis is still a really good baseball player. He's just not the 5-tool baseball player that we thought he was. He's more of like a 3-tool baseball player now, where it's like he gets on base, he steals bases, and he plays great defense, and his bat's going to be good enough. But he's just not hitting for contact, and he's not hitting for power. And before this, his answer to that was always like, it's baseball, man. It's going to come back around. And now, instead of doing that, he's like, yeah, I'm just trying to do all the other things. I think I'm still a good baseball player. And it almost feels like he's coming to terms with, maybe I'm not that guy. Maybe I'm not the MVP. Maybe I'm not the best player in baseball. And maybe that's okay. Maybe I can just be a good baseball player, and that's good enough. Should Padre fans be more happy that he seems to be finding more stable ground for mental wellness? Or should they be freaked out that Tatis seems to be going like, yeah, that guy you saw in the first 5 weeks of the season, like that might not be who I am? Anyone? It's open to the whole table. Anyone can take this one.
I just think it's
Yeah,
tough.
go ahead.
I mean, I'll just say, like, I think, I don't want to hear him compared to other outfielders in the National League. I think the toughest thing about Fernando Tatis Jr. is that we're trying to compare him to the first 3 years of his career.
Yeah.
And that's why people are curious. Not because, I mean, however many outfielders people can name in the National League, we would have expected, like, that really wasn't the conversation a couple of years ago. It was, how high is the ceiling on this guy as a player, in terms of what it is. He was the most irresistible player in baseball for a stretch of time. And obviously he's lost a little bit of that luster. So, I don't spend a lot of time comparing him. I know where he's ranking in WAR on the team and all that other sort of stuff. That's fine. But, I do think that there's a higher standard, or there was a higher standard for him, and that he's coming up pretty short of where that standard was set early on in his career, I think is what the issue is with Tatis, but that's just me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, ultimately, I think most of us kind of fell into the trap that he would be this generation's Ken Griffey Jr. or something like that, you know? Um, he's not that guy, but that doesn't mean that even this version of Fernando Tatis Jr. can't lead the Padres to greatness. I think the issue I would have personally is I just it's okay to work through these mental issues and talk about things and kind of reframe expectations. I know that Fernando has been a player who has had the weight of the world put on his shoulders ever since he was a kid. So again, going back to the Ricky Rubio and Gilberto Mora conversation, that's tough. That's not for everybody, right? He's the son of a former Major League Baseball player, right? So I think we all kind of expected a lot from him from the get-go, and he's settling in. It sounds like he's settling into who he is, right? Which is fine. Ultimately, I like it more when a player acts the way that, say, Manny Machado does, which is to lead by example. And if he's struggling, he's just kind of, he's maybe going to shrug you off,
Yeah.
and say, yeah, it's fine. I'll be okay. Don't worry about it. And then he goes out and you don't worry about it anymore,
Right.
right? I know that Padre fans have been clamoring for years to get that captain, that C on his jersey. He definitely deserves it. He is the heart and soul of this team. Where's that leave Fernando? That's actually a very good thing, I think, for him because he doesn't have to carry with the weight of the entire franchise on his shoulders to have a guy like Manny Machado in the clubhouse with him. And I know that they've had their issues in the past, but seemingly everything's okay now. So, I mean, if Fernando, for the rest of his career, is a guy that's going to hit 270, 30 home runs, 80 to 110 RBI each season, depending on where he is in the batting order, and steal 25 bags for you, I mean, any Padres fan, especially historically speaking, is going to say yes to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I that puts him on track for the Hall of Fame. So I think ultimately that's fine. I would take that again in a heartbeat, and I think he will too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think everything you said is right. And, I don't want to feed into it, but when terms were used early on, like even when his signing, it was like statue contract, right? He had more nationally televised deals than anybody else in baseball for a period of time. And, then he goes through it with the injury and the suspension. And I just think that for some people, it's like, oh, like, it's not that it's bad. It's just not, it wasn't, how it started for a lot of people, and the disappointment of not being there at a time where the team went to the National League Championship Series, I think it's always just going to leave a scar for some people, and I don't know that he can ever do anything about that other than take the team back to the World Series again at some point, somewhere down the road. But, it's a complicated situation. It really is a fascinating thing to talk about, not just from the player standpoint, but also from the mental side of it. As well. Well, Eric, we've taken up a ton of your time, and I can tell like you're just not going to apologize for this Mexico win. So I feel like I mean, you can't apologize for that. Zero point 0.6 expected xG for the U.S. men's national team getting dominated all match long. So you're not going to apologize for any of the things that happen here. But dude, it was great catching up with you. Thank you for doing this, and we appreciate it, and I hope you'll do it again.
Absolutely. I'm not going to do Mauricio Pochettino's bidding. He's making a pretty penny from the U.S. Soccer Federation, so he can cry and whine all he wants. He's crying all the way to the bank, and this is crazy to talk about Mexico in these terms, but they've got 10 titles within the framework of CONCACAF. I think this is the only sport or one of the few sports, mainstream sports, where the US is not top dog. So at least it gives something to shoot for. And the US has made these incredible leaps and bounds over the last 30 years. So I think the future of that rivalry is going to be very exciting for fans on both sides of the border. And I am very happy to come on and talk to you guys about it anytime. So thank you so much.
All right, give him a follow. I think he's still doing social media. Eric Gomez 86, but look for his bylines at ESPN on ESPN.com. We always support our local people around here. Thank you to Eric Gomez for all of the time here on this Monday.
Eric was great. We fucked that up, though, Darren, because we have said time and time again that this media company we're building, including this show, that we don't just talk about sports. We talk about culture. We had a man in Mexico City. We didn't ask him about food. We didn't ask, we need to have Eric back on at some point, because I want to go to Mexico City and go on like a foodie tour, and I know you can help with that, and the internet can help with that, but I also like the locals point me in the right direction, and I would like to talk about Mexico City's food with Eric Gomez, if that's a thing that he partakes in.
Yeah, first time I went with the Padres. Padres were playing in 2017 against the Astros, and Eric, we stayed in the hotel we stayed in because of Eric. Went to the restaurants that we went to because of Eric. Went and saw some of the sites because of him. So, yes, he is a great guy. And I know through the radio show over the years, when the Padres have played in Mexico City during the regular season, people have literally gone and found Eric Gomez's social media accounts and said, like, where do I need to go to eat this? Where do I need to go to eat that? So he is absolutely, it's like we all have a friend. And Eric Gomez is that guy. If you're going to Mexico City, be sure to hit him up. John, I think I got to give you some credit here. I don't remember exactly the conversation, but Manny Machado's named a starter to the All-Star game. Fernando Tatis Jr., I think a little bit of a surprise. I think he was surprised. According to Kevin Acey's Padre Daily, Tatis had booked a trip somewhere during the All-Star break to go someplace else, so this was a surprise for him. And I want to say that you mentioned Jason Adam as a candidate for the All-Star game on Thursday of last week or Wednesday of last week. I don't remember, and I hadn't spent a ton of time thinking about it, but I want to say that's right. And you mentioned that on this podcast, did you not?
Yeah, I was thinking this morning. I was like, I should clap myself on the shoulder for this one, because we were talking about who else would go besides Manny, and I said Jason Adam, and you were like, no, it would be Robert Suarez. He's, one of the best closers in the league and leading the league in saves. And I was like, no, they don't want to bring in the guy with the 4 ERA. They want to bring in the guy with the 1 ERA, and Jason Adam gets to go. I did see in the AC piece, one of the AC pieces, that Tatis said about, not only canceling his plans, but he's like, yeah, we'll go. We'll show our faces there. And I was like, what a low bar. Like, not like we're going to go on, we're going to put on a show, whatever. Just, yeah, we'll go. We'll show our faces there. Sure. They're paying us to go. We'll go there. We'll put on the uniform. We'll stand in front of the cameras, and that's why we're going. But yes, I did think that Jason Adam was the best bullpen arm of the bullpen over the entire first half of the season. That he might be the likely one to go. So yeah, I'll give myself a little credit.
Give yourself a clap on the shoulder. Not enough people will take the time to do that, John. You are not shy about giving yourself credit. So I figured at some point,
no one else is doing it.
I wanted to beat you to it at some stage, because I remember you saying that, and I just remember the conversation. Be like, yeah, I don't think I'm invested in the All-Star game, but I figured the National League saves leader felt like a good candidate. So anyhow, either way to me, I'm not even sure what I'm going to be doing on Tuesday.
Improves Jason Adams' trade value, right?
Now we're trading him also. We have a quote from AJ Preller, and I mentioned this when we were talking to Eric, that Preller was on MLB Network Radio and was asked about the approach of the trade deadline. Now, there's a lot of nothing in this quote, but there is something he says towards the tail end of it. If we could cue this up, John, so that everybody can listen so they know what we're talking about. Because he does get very specific about wanting to add hitters, plural, at the trade deadline coming up at the end of July.
But again, I think the biggest thing is, from my standpoint in this chair, we're prepared because we've got great scouts, analysts, staff, coaching staff that, they all participate in the process. We feel like we have a pretty good pulse on the league and who's out there. It doesn't always mean you're going to make great decisions, but I think we're in position, with talented players in our organization, both at the major league and minor league level, to at least be in these conversations. And then you've got to, as a GM, evaluate like how realistic it is that your team can win and contend, and then try to weigh that out versus future, and wanting to make sure that's a sustained run. So, we've had the chance here, over the last 5 years to be in 3 playoff runs, and we've had 5 in a row where we've been in the mix till the end. And at the end of the day, we'll look at our team here this year. Getting Darvish King back would be huge. The bullpen's been strong. We've got a lot of different weapons in the pen. We've had some you could add to a strength. And on the offense side, it's probably rounding out the depth of the lineup. I think, like you mentioned, the top of the lineup should be strong. And you look up and you've got a Jake Cronenworth hitting 7th and 8th some nights, but you've got to be deep, 1 through 9. And I think probably adding a bat or two is something that we're going to look at here in the next few weeks to try to help our team get to October.
Adding a bat or two is something that we're looking at. Now, again, this doesn't mean anything. He's not under oath when he's giving these interviews. And sometimes you are just sending a message out to the league. To Eric's point, sometimes you are trying to gaslight other general managers just because that's the way AJ Preller likes to operate. I think it's a strategy for him. And also what he's saying, and it was his word, it is a huge start for Yu Darvish tonight. When you start thinking about what the prognosis is going to be for Yu Darvish and for Michael King, it sounds like there's a lot of the decision making is going to depend on what it is that this looks like starting tonight for Darvish against the Diamondbacks.
Yes, undoubtedly. I have questions about this Darvish thing because earlier in the season, he was dealing with the same thing. They were going through rehab. He had a minor league rehab start that looked good, and then they shut him down. This time, he's essentially coming back from the same injury, right? And they're rehabbing him and he's doing simulated games. No minor league rehab start, just straight to the majors. I don't understand. Why are they it's I don't even want to get into the difference between the simulated game, the minor league start, a major league start, all that. Just why do it different? Why? If his arm's going to hurt after one start, do they decide they'd rather have that start be in the majors than the minors? I don't understand the difference in process here.
Yeah, I think so. I probably would say, John, that it's July 7th. That's probably the biggest difference.
Can't wait any longer.
It's July 7th and your process is going to change, right? If it was August and September, you wouldn't be middling around with some of that stuff. You'd be like, we got to get him here as quick as possible. And when you have decisions to make within 3 weeks, and these trades just don't happen in the day, but when you got to start laying some of the groundwork for some of the trades, you probably are like, we need to get him here. Now, this is Darvish also. Darvish, who is signed, who I think will be managed a little bit different. I think this is just opinion, not information. But I do think he will be handled a little bit differently than King. Because Darvish is signed, and Darvish is at a stage of his career where what is his future? This is his future. It's now. Where Michael King is going into free agency for the first time, and maybe the only time in his career. You never know. So I think that has to be in the back of his mind and certainly in the back of his agent's mind. And it should be. It should be. That doesn't make him bad. Doesn't make him a bad teammate. Doesn't make him a bad person. But I think with Darvish, it's we need to just find out what you are. And again, my opinion, he is just trying to get himself physically to the point where it's I'm going to give this my best shot. It's never going to be great. It's probably going to break at some point. But I've done enough. At least I think I can give this a good, honest effort here and see what happens and take my chances with all of the years of experience that I have trying to pitch through whatever it is that he's probably still dealing with.
Yes, agreed with all that. 3 more years that Darvish is under contract after this season. That's fun. Have we ever been in a situation where a player was in the major leagues playing regularly for a team while his kid was drafted in the draft? Because I don't know if you've been paying attention to Darvish's kid. He currently pitches for Cathedral Catholic. He's good. He's really good. And he's probably going to get drafted out of high school in the next year or two here. Darvish will still technically be under contract with the Padres. I wonder how many other teams this Darvish kid will work out for. Or if he'll just be like, no, would like to stay here. Would like to sign with the Padres. Please don't draft me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have an opportunity. Yeah, players have a good way of manipulating the draft. Yeah, I mean, it had to have happened with Griffey, if nobody else, right?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, he played with his dad on the Mariners, right?
Right.
But his dad wasn't Ken Griffey Sr. wasn't I don't know. Is Darvish a future Hall of Famer? He's on the line, right?
I would say Hall of very good.
Yeah, I don't think he ever won a Cy Young award, and I'm not sure he ever won a title, so he's probably Hall of very good. But yeah, I'm paying attention to all these things. Look, Darvish is a player that I've rooted for a long time, even before he was on the Padres. He's my wife's favorite player of all time. I'm going to be watching this start with bated breath and a lot of excitement, and I hope he's good, and I hope he's healthy, and I hope the next 3.5 years, Darvish is the Darvish that we've come to know.
Yeah, I'm with you. He has been one of my favorite players to watch. We were in Peoria when he made his first ever Cactus League start. The scene at the Peoria Sports Complex
Insane.
that day was insane. And Will Venable took him deep. Hit a home run against them in this first ever Cactus League game. And ESPN was all there. This is when ESPN really cared. And like they were doing, I remember Aaron Boone was working for ESPN. Aaron Boone and Pedro Gomez were there to do live stand-ups for Darvish's first start in a Cactus League game. Think about that. Pedro Gomez, who I absolutely loved, who's no longer with us, passed away a few years back, tragically. And Aaron Boone, now the manager of the Yankees. They were there doing live reports for Darvish's first Cactus League start. And then Venable got him, and Darvish said something after the game, and who knows what he actually said. Maybe he got lost in translation. But he said something about, yeah, that ball kind of got up in the wind a little bit.
Yeah.
And then we had Venable on the show afterwards, and we told him what we created an international incident. And we told Venable what he said. He goes, oh, I guess I just got lucky against the great Yu Darvish, because who am I? I'm just Will Venable.
Okay, first of all, the Darvish lore from before he came to America is great. If you ever have a chance, go back and look at his Japanese baseball playing career. And like he created incidents because a gossip magazine caught him at like a nightclub, like drinking beer and smoking cigarettes. He was like 16 years old, and it was this whole thing. And he dated like models and stuff. That lore goes crazy. But we should probably end this soon, but I want to throw a stat at you that I heard over the weekend that blew my mind. Do you know who leads the Padres all time in walk-off hits?
Well, is it the aforementioned Will Venable?
It is the aforementioned Will Venable.
I always liked Will. I like Will.
There's
Not
nothing
bad as a manager.
There's nothing about Will to not like. He has 5 all-time walk-off hits for the Padres. I believe Jake Cronenworth over the weekend got his 4th. So there's some suspicion that maybe Jake will someday pass Will Venable and become the Padres all-time leader in this. It is so wild. You look at this list. There's no like Tony Gwynn, Ken Caminiti, Manny Machado. Like it's these guys who are like, yeah, they were good.
Like, it's Jorge Alfaro,
Right.
Will Venable, Jake Cronenworth.
It's like, yeah, these guys are good. They're fine. But like, what?
Yeah. All right. Well, to sum up this podcast, SDFC I think is fine. I think the Padres are okay. And Mexico is deserved champs, and the U.S. has got a lot of work to do. I don't feel great about it. That's me summing up my podcast, John. You?
I think you did a good job. I think we were, positively radiant last week when talking about Diego Luna, and it was kind of sad to see him go back to not being a huge impact player in the
he had
final.
Like 35 touches in this game. Like he did not even. He was not there.
And they were obviously like pressuring him, trying to get. It's pretty obvious that when he sees 2 or 3 guys coming at him, he gets rid of the ball pretty quickly, which is probably the right thing to do. But they knew how to keep him off the ball by doing that. But yeah, it's it was sad to see. But I'm still excited about him. I still like this team. I don't know how good they are internationally, but I like them. They're likable-ish. So I don't know. I'll still watch the World Cup and root for him. I'm just not going into it very confident.
No. A lot of work to do there as well. All right. Again, totally free podcast today. So do feel free to spread the word of Section 1904. You get access to the Discord channel, which is always popping when it comes to food and entertainment and all sorts of fun stuff happening there. You get the front row seat delivered to your inbox every day, and you get podcasts just like this, usually a little shorter, but it's a Monday, it's a weekend recap, and we didn't even get into F1 and NASCAR, so we'll have to save that for a different day. But Enjoy your Monday. Looking forward to watching Darvish start Monday night. We'll do it again tomorrow.